In this video, we're going to try out 5 different color temperatures of LED recessed canvas light fixtures. We're going to put each one of them on the dimmer switch. We're going to start them off at 50%. We're going to push them up to their highest setting. Then we're going to bring them down to their lowest setting. Stay tuned. It's all coming up next. What's going on, folks? Kendall here with Renos for Pros and Joes, helping you simplify the renovation and remodeling process. On this channel, we do hands-on product tool and gear reviews as well as renovation tip and strategy videos. So if you're interested in renovation, remodeling, repair, real estate, home improvement, or property maintenance, then subscribe because this channel and this content is for you. So if you've been tuned in to any of the recent videos that we posted, then you know that we have been working on a recessed lighting project. And in today's video, we're going to be comparing 5 different color temperatures of recessed LED canvas light fixtures. And we're going to do all in the same space. So the space that I'm standing in now, if you've been watching, you know that we started off with a single chandelier in this space that had 360-watt bulbs. We have since upgraded to 13 LED recessed canvas light fixtures. And today we're going to be demoing out the color temperature of the 2700K LED fixture, the 3000K, 3500K, 4000K, and 5000K. We're going to do it all in this space. So let me quickly give you an overall view of the format for today. So we're going to start off each color temperature at 50% on our dimmer switch. Then we're going to move it up to 100%. Then we're going to bring it down to 75, then 50, then 25, then its lowest setting. Okay? And we're shooting from this angle right now. We're going to reposition the camera on the other side of the room so that you can see what it looks like from that position as well. Stay tuned as we get started. Okay, so I'm going to step over here to the dimmer switch. I'm going to raise the dimmer switch setting up to its highest setting. I'll walk around the space so that you can see what the illumination looks like. I will go ahead and bring it down to its lowest setting, and I will do the exact same thing. Remember that I will step over here to the camera to adjust the settings. One of the things that I want you to pay attention to is not only the color temperature that you see coming out of the light fixture, but I also want you to pay attention to the colors that you see along this back wall, as well as the overall content of the space, because that's one of the things that is going to be a big distinction between changing from color temperatures. It's just the way that the overall items in the space appear. And so pay close attention to that. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So we're currently at 50% right now, and I'm going to move on up to 100%. And I'm just going to take a quick stroll around the space so that you can see what it looks like. Keeping in mind now that the space that I'm standing in is 14.5 feet by 15 feet, and we've got 8.5-foot ceilings in this space. We've got 13 recessed LED downlights installed in the space. And I'm going to step back over here to the dimmer switch now, and I'm going to bring it down to 75% here. As I bring it down lower to the 50% mark, you'll be able to see a more dramatic change in the overall brightness in the space. Now I'm going to bring it down to about 25% here now. And then now I'm going to bring it down all the way down to its lowest setting. And so this is what it looks like now. Now, what you're seeing on the camera currently is darker than what it actually is, and so I'm going to adjust the camera up to what it actually looks like here in the space now. Okay, so we've now adjusted the camera so that you can see what it actually looks like here where I'm standing. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to walk around the space so that you can see what it looks like. This is very similar to what you would expect to find in a candlelight dinner type of setting. And now I'm going to go ahead and adjust the camera back up or back down to the setting where we previously had it so that we can be prepared to go ahead and turn our lights back on. And now we're going to bring our brightness back up to 50% now. And now let's go ahead and push it all the way up to 100%. So I forgot to mention earlier, but we're at 2700K now. We're going to move on up the ladder all the way up to 5000K, gradually changing out our light color temperature as we go. So let's go ahead and move to the other side of the space, because sometimes when we move the camera to the other side, the space looks different just from having a different vantage point. So we're going to do that so you can get a good idea of what it looks like from my left-hand side over here. Okay, so I've changed locations. We are at 100% over here on our dimmer switch, and you can see what the space looks like now. As I mentioned just before, this is 2700K, and we're gonna step back over here and let's go ahead and dim it down again so that you can see what it looks like from this viewpoint. We're now lowering down. We're now at 50. And then now we are at about 25%. And then I'm gonna go ahead and lower it down to its lowest setting. It should almost appear dark in here right now based on the settings on the camera. As I said, I'm gonna step over here and adjust them so that you can see what it actually looks like here. And so this is what it looks like in the space now as I'm walking around. As I said, this has a very cozy, candlelight dinner type feel to it. All right, so we brought it back up to 50%. Now I've turned things up to its brightest setting, and go ahead and take a mental note of what the space looks like, because when we come back, we will then be at 3000K. All right, so we are now at 3000K, and we currently have the dimmer switch set all the way up to the max at 100%, and I'm gonna adjust it down now to 50% just so that you can see what it looks like in the space. Then I'm gonna move it back up to 100%, and then I'm gonna walk around in the space just as I did before. Now, remember what I said before, to pay close attention to the way that the items in this space look, in addition to just looking at overall the light and the way that these fixtures cast light, particularly along this back wall and along this wall here with these drapes, just so you can get an overall feel of what the color temperature looks like, in addition to just looking at the fixtures in the ceilings. You'll be able to see subtle changes as we change from color temperature to color temperature, as we go from the more amber and yellow up to a more blue-white color. So now I'm gonna go ahead and turn our fixture down to our 75%. Now we're at 50% again, and then now we're at 25%. And then let's go ahead and take it all the way down to its lowest setting. Now, as I mentioned before, I have to adjust the camera so that you'll be able to see what this looks like in the space. And I'm gonna do that right quick so that you can see a more accurate representation of what the lighting actually looks like here where I'm standing. Okay, so this is a more accurate representation of what the light looks like in the space currently. I am walking around in the space so that you can see. It still has a very candlelight-like feel to it. As you notice, the color in here is not quite as amber as it was before at the 2700K. So the 3000K has a little less orange hue to it. Let's go ahead and turn our light back up. But before we do that, let's go ahead and adjust our settings here so we're not blown out. Now let's bring our light back on up to 100% here. And then we'll reposition the camera here on the other side of the room to have a different aspect of what this color temperature looks like in the space. Okay, so here we are on the other side of the room, so we can do the exact same thing. Remember, we are at 100% right now with our dimmer switch, and then we're gonna go ahead and bring it down gradually so that we can see what that looks like as well. Now we're gonna drop down to 75% now. Now we're around 50%. Bump it down a little bit now. Now we are at around 25%, and then we're gonna take it all the way down to its lowest setting. Now, once again, I'm gonna adjust the camera so that you can see what this color looks like once we've adjusted for the environment. And this gives a more accurate representation of what I'm seeing in the space as I'm standing here. So, as I mentioned before, this is a very low setting, and as you notice and compare this to the previous 2700K color temperature, this still has a warm feel to it, but it is not nearly as orange as the previous setting. Let's turn things back up, and then we'll get ready to go ahead and change to the next color temperature. Let's go ahead and bump this thing back up. We'll go ahead and move it up. We're now at 50%, and then we're going to go all the way up to 100%. Now, as I mentioned before, be sure to take a mental note of what the space looks like. We're on 100% on our dimmer switch. We're at 3000 K color temperature. When we return, we will then be at 3500 K. All right, so we're now a little bit better than halfway. We are now at 3500 K color temperature. We're at 100% on our dimmer switch. I'm going to dim it down to 50% so that you can see what that looks like. Perhaps that will give you a little bit more contrast so that you can see a little bit better what things look like in the space with it not so bright. I'm going to go ahead and bump it back up just for the sake of continuity so that I can walk around the space so that you can see how things look in here at 3500 K. So we've done 2700, we've done 3000, we're now at 3500. Hopefully you're able to see that the color is becoming more white and more blue, and we're gradually having less orange and now less yellow in the overall color temperature. So let me go ahead and bring this back down. Let's drop it down to 50% here now. Then we'll go ahead down to 25%, and then we'll bring it all the way down to its lowest setting. And let's go ahead and adjust things so that you can see more accurately what it looks like here in the space. Okay. And so this is more accurately what it looks like to me as I stand and walk around in the space. This is still more like a candlelight setting, even though the color temperature in here is getting gradually bluer. And you can probably see that now as I'm walking around in the space, or just overall looking up at the fixtures in the ceiling. They don't look nearly as orange or yellow as they did before. So let's go ahead and get things ready to turn our lights back on. And we'll go ahead and push things on up to 100%, and then we'll go ahead and move to the other side of the room. So now we're on the other side of the room, and hopefully you're able to see from a different vantage point what these lights look like compared to where we were before. So remember, 2700, then 3000, now we're at 3500. So you've got two more settings left, which is going to be 4000 and then 5000. Let's go ahead and dim this down again. Let's bring it on down to 50%. Now we're going to drop it on down to about 25%. And then let's go ahead and bring it all the way down to this low, low, low setting here. And I'll adjust things for you again. Okay. So this is what it looks like. It's very dimly lit, but you can still see in the space. If you've got food on your plate, you can make out what all your dishes are. You can find your cup and everything in here. Not a problem. Let's go ahead and bump this back up to 100%. Come on, we're getting close. All right, so take a mental note of what things look like in the space, paying close attention to not only the color temperatures from the fixtures themselves, looking at them in the ceiling, but also take a close look at this back wall here, as well as our drapes and things here, as well as the contents in the space. We've got two more adjustments to make. We're going to jump up to 4000 K. And before we do that, which color temperature are you liking best so far? I've shown you three, so we've got two left. We've done 2700, we've done 3000, now we're at 3500. Just wondering if you're someone who is leaning more towards the more orange or yellow end of the spectrum, or more on the white to blue end of the spectrum. So we're a little bit further than midway now, and one of the things I wanted to point out, which you've probably been able to notice so far, is that just because when we're working on the lower end of the spectrum in the 2700K to 3000K, traditionally we think about those lights being dim as well as being amber, because it's kind of embedded in our memory of being in older homes that only have a single fixture in the space and it doesn't really cast very much light. But as you can see, when you have an even spacing of fixtures within an overall room layout, then the color temperature is only the color temperature. It doesn't really specifically tie to the overall brightness of the space. And so hopefully you've been able to see that thus far, that as we move from 2700 to 3000 and now 3500, our color temperature is changing, but we still have a wide spectrum range with regards to lumens and brightness in the space, which we're controlling with our dimmer switch here. So when I come back, we will be at 4000K. All right, so we're now at 4000K. This is definitely more blue than 3500K, and hopefully you're able to see that. So I'm gonna step back over here now and step to our dimmer switch. We are at 100%, and I'm gonna go ahead and take a quick spin around the room before we do anything else. So I'm gonna kind of walk around in here, and you can see, paying attention to not only the color temperature of the lights in the ceiling, but as well as the way that this back wall is illuminated, and our drapes here along this wall, and then our contents of the space, just the table, the chairs here, which we'll be able to see when we reposition the camera over here to this side, and just the overall feel of the space. We've kind of gone around the space here now. Let's go ahead and drop things on down. As I mentioned before, we were at 100%, 75%, now 50%. And at 50%, you may be able to see a more drastic contrast between the other color temperatures because it's not as bright, and you can kind of get a more clear sense of the tone of the lights in the space. Let's go ahead and draw it down a little bit further. Now we're at 25%, and then let's go ahead and draw it all the way down. Now, let me adjust the camera here for you all so that you can see what it looks like here on my end. Okay, and so this is what things look like in the space now. We're walking around, and as I mentioned before, you can definitely feel more of a blue, cool feel in the room versus the more orange and warm feel. It's not better or worse for me, it's just different. It has a different feel to the space, which I think is the overall intent and purpose of being able to have the flexibility of changing your color temperatures in your fixture. So let's go ahead and get the camera prepared to go ahead and change out. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and swap locations first before we do that. All right, so same setting, different vantage point. You can see different fixtures in the ceiling, but same overall feel. It's a very blue or much bluer feeling than the feeling that we had in here initially when we started out at the 2700K color temperature. And let's gradually bring it up. We're now a little bit better than 25%. 25% is probably right around in here. Then we're gonna bring it on up to 50%, which is right around in here. So this is a good color temperature to be able to see some of the nuances of the color in the space. And so as I'm standing in here, it has a very blue feel to it. Let's go ahead and move our camera back over here to the point where we started because there's something I want to point out. Okay, so the reason why I have positioned the camera in this way is because there is one fixture along this back wall that is not 4000K, it's actually 5000K. And you should be able to see it relatively clearly now. This fixture here is 4000, this one's 4000, this one is 5000. And I'm able to look up in the ceiling and be able to notice that there's a difference. And one of the main ways that I can detect that difference outside of just purely looking at the fixture itself is looking at the way that this wall is illuminated with this fixture at 5000K. See, at 5000K, it is definitely looks blue. And we're already in a much more blue setting, but I would say this is a more of a bright white. But as we move from the 4000 to 5000, we're definitely going in the direction of blue now. And you can see that here, and you can see that just from the overall illumination here along this wall, that this definitely has a more blue look to it. And it even casts a more blue color here against these greenish sage colored drapes. I know that difference in color temperature is difficult to see when we have the camera positioned like this. You really can't see that fixture over there very well sticking out with that different color temperature, but as you get closer to it, you can see it a little bit more dramatically. Let's go ahead and push our illumination up to the maximum setting. So now we're at 100% on our dimmer switch. And once again, I want you to take a mental note of what the space looks like at 4000K. Paying close attention to this back wall. You probably can't see it right now, but you will be able to tell that there is a blue hue only right here underneath this fixture. And as soon as you get 50% of the way between this fixture and this fixture, the light is no longer blue and it is more of a white color temperature. Keeping in mind that the walls in this space are off-white. They're not white. Mental note, 4000K will not return. We will be at 5000K, our last color temperature for this demonstration. Okay, so I'm back and we are now at 5000K. Hopefully you're able to see how much more blue it is in the space right now. I'm gonna quickly just kind of walk around while we're at this color temperature, and then I'm gonna drop it down to 50% so that you can see a little bit better in case the light's too bright for you to be able to detect these subtle differences in color temperature. So now I'm gonna step over here and let's draw things down to 50%. Hopefully now you're able to see the difference in colors. And I have double checked this time and I've made sure that all of our fixtures here are 5000. And this is what it looks like in the space. Okay? Now let's go ahead and draw this all the way down to its lowest setting and make our adjustment over here so that you can have a better representation of what it actually looks like. So the lighting in here is quite blue. And let's move and reposition. We'll first move it on up to about 25%, which is right around in here. And then we're going to go ahead and push it up to 50%, which is right here. A little bit higher. Now we're at 75%. And now we're at 100%. Okay? And so I'm going to walk around the space one more time for you so you can kind of get a good feel for what it looks like in the space. Remember to pay close attention to the way that this back wall looks, as well as the way that the fixtures look in the ceiling, as well as the contents in the space. Okay, so we started out with 2700K, then we moved up to 3000K, then 3500K, then 4000K, and then 5000K, which is what we're currently at now. So hopefully you found this color temperature demonstration helpful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.